So if we're really following this and the energetics are understood by those that don't generally talk about it to the public or allow the public to know, that in the energetic cycle would also signal the end of a reserve currency period, then we're starting to see that, the formation of the BRICS right now. We're moving into a different currency itself. So I'm just wondering why. This is an anecdotal side point here, that these cycles, energetic cycles, match up with currencies and the lifetime of a currency on a reserve status.
Additionally, researchers found that unseeded hurricanes often undergo the same structural changes that were expected from seeded hurricanes. This finding called storm fury's successes into question, as the changes reported now had a natural explanation. The last experimental flight was 1971 due to a lack of candidate storms and a changeover in NOAA's fleet.
But that goes into it. That's manipulation, not creation. That's modification, not creation. There's a huge differential there. That lexicon is very important, of creating or manipulating or modifying.
But I'd actually assume that creating is substantially easier than manipulating, because planting a seed is very, very easy. Moving a tree is very, very hard, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like the way I look at it. If so you have a small depression form, and then it starts to expand and grow as the storm grows wild and crazy. The implication to me that you could move a 30-mile wide hurricane sounds pretty nuts, but the idea that you could seed with a very small, and I mean very, very small, part in a warm water that creates the beginnings of what could be a hurricane seems much more plausible. Not that I'm saying it's possible. I'm saying it seems easier to plant a seed than move a hurricane. Here's a story from the AP News. Here's why experts don't think cloud seeding played a role in Dubai's downpour. That's great. I appreciate that from the experts. The important part of the story is that they did cloud seed and do cloud seed in Dubai to increase rain. Whether that resulted in mass flooding or not is irrelevant. All that matters is the AP is outright telling you that governments of the world are cloud seeding intentionally. They are making it rain on purpose. That's normal.
Yeah, Dubai admits that on the record, though. They publicly claim that they do that.
Yeah,
China has as well during the manipulation of weather during the Olympics. So it's not a secret. They're coming out and telling you forthright that it is happening.
Oh, I wanted to even go back to 1861. There was that colonel they called the Rainmaker who went out to
Yes.
sea and
Flooded.
literally bombed the atmosphere and said I could create and he had a patent for it, right? And they were like, and then he took credit for every storm.
When was this?
Yeah.
1861.
Yep.
18. What is this story?
They called him the Rainmaker. I think there's an article maybe in the Intelligencer about him.
You notice even Dubai, though, is still using the old tech. Like you're talking about that is really old tech, but have you seen the planes that they're using now to do it? It's the exact same tech. They haven't changed. I mean, it's like maybe a little more sophisticated, but they're still relying on this idea of seeding nuclei to get water to fall.
I mean, you brought up HARP and talking about hurricanes. What can you say about that, and why would you say HARP?
Well, because HARP is the biggest type of technology. In fact, I believe there's even technology higher than HARP now. HARP's been around forever.
High frequency active oral radio
research
program.
Yep.
Yeah,
And why do people think that HARP changes the weather?
It burns.
That seems made up to me.
Well, they are messing, with the ionosphere, right? But what we're talking about is really small. They're pushing a little bubble up. Nothing the size of a hurricane, nothing the size that could do that.
See, that's not the point, though. For HARP, though, HARP's not creating the hurricane. HARP's adjusting the atmospheric conditions on Earth to allow hurricanes to be formed in a certain area on Earth.
The dollar's being eviscerated as the U.S. is creating $100,000 of debt per second. BRICS nations introduce a new global currency called the unit. The unit would be pegged at 40% to gold and 60% to a basket of BRICS currencies, a statement token using the gold held within their borders. What do you think is going to happen with metals? Call the proud Americans of the Patriot Gold Group today before it's too late. And Patriot Gold Group has the No Fee for Life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold or silver. And you may qualify for the No Fee for Life IRA. On qualifying rollovers, give them a call, 888-546-7020 for your free investor guide today. And now on with the video.
there's this big leap where they're like, they built the thing, also it controls the weather. And I'm like, where's the missing
I think
link
it's
there?
more than just controlling weather. I think they're burning, they'll tell you they're burning a hole in the ionosphere, which is where radio transmissions go. Migratory birds use the ionosphere, the magnets with the cryptochromes. It's affecting something. I think it doesn't just stay in the hole. I think there's a ripple effect, honestly. And other people would say that by doing this, you ever heard of cymatics? Like with frequencies used to make a sound become matter. I think there's something to Tim's point. The leap, that's for me is where I'm thinking of. If you can control something through frequencies like cymatics does with shapes in matter or sound into matter, that's a reason it could potentially be controlling weather.
I just scale it up. Now the sun's frequency is changing, so that would also bend and also have changes in Earth's magnetic field. So could you do something at a higher amplification possibility by knowing that resonant frequency is changing, because it's a known fact Earth's magnetic field is declining. It was about 5% per decade, but now has that sped up? I mean, the swarm data has gone offline. So use cymatics and bring it into a different magnetic field state, and then could the output be different because of that different field that it's evolved in?
Yeah, I think there's a potential for something nefarious to be happening there.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's not just Alaska. Exactly. There's a lot of
many harps. And if you think, if you
a lot of
believe
CERNs.
that I was just going to say, if you believe that they're smashing particles at the speed of light together beneath Geneva, that do create microscopic black holes that other people, like scientists, are worried.
Yeah,
might
but don't
eat up
touch
Earth.
the weather.
This is also possible. Then,
Don't touch the weather ever.
And aren't they building a larger hadron collider?
Yes.
I think they're doing black holes now beneath South Dakota at some point.
Yeah, so we have Fermilab, which is a super collider, and that's in Illinois, and it's massive. And then the Large Hadron Collider, which it's Geneva, but it's actually bigger than that. It's this massive ring throughout Central Europe. And they want to build bigger ones so they can get to higher and higher speeds and smash particles into each other, simulating the conditions of the Big Bang, they say.
Yeah.
Please stop. Please
Where's the
stop.
power generation coming from that? They're all yapping on about global warming, burning too many fossil fuels, yet they're bringing things at larger scale that require just absurd amounts of power.
Maybe they have to create the hurricanes to fuel.
To power the windmills, I get
Well, so the thing is, if someone were to say, we detonate a bomb, superheating an area, creating a depression or something like this, which could, has a 3% chance of creating a large tropical depression, and then maybe a 3% chance of becoming a hurricane, is that so far-fetched?
chemical nucleation. Nobody's talking about carbon black. That's one of the new chemical seeding projects that they're using on top of some of these hurricanes, carbon black, because you get that heating element in there, and then that heating creates upwelling and higher pressure in itself that changes storm patterns. Everybody's focused on silver iodide or, nanometals, the barium, the strontium, and the sort of thing in the atmosphere. But very, very few people are talking about carbon black seeding.
What is that?
Carbon black as just graphene particles.
How do they do it? Are they delivering it the same way?
Yeah, same exact way, same delivery system.
Canisters and stuff or whatever through planes. Interesting. And
But think about the heat absorption on carbon versus a reflective part of like a nanoparticulate of metal that would be reflective, which they use for supposed geoengineering to bounce and block sunlight, but now absorb the heat. And what could you do with that massive amount of heat absorption on a certain area of the storm? Because that's where, it's going to require heat. Because going back to that high pressure blocking system, if you're going to keep a high pressure block there so that hurricane will stay south of it or west of it or wherever, you're going to have to create a high pressure dome that stays there for days and days and days. And how are you going to get that much heat to stay in the same exact area? And the skies would almost turn black from all the dust coming out if they were going to use something at that level to be able to continue to create the high blocking system with the heat like that to create the dome.
What if they had an AI that could calculate areas of the ocean that are ripe for tropical depressions, hurricanes, if they but nudge something? Is that
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
100%.
That's kind of where
What do you think?
I'm at with that.
Possible. You could form something again, if you're going to nucleate that to get that formation to start and then upwell and grow from there. But once you get it, then you're talking about chaos. Once it grows into
Where it goes, it goes.
Where it goes. Unless you really, the tech is something so far advanced that we don't understand at this point, then how do you put a blocking high pressure that's so vast for weeks to keep a storm that south?
I wonder if the people creating it care about the chaos yet. They're just like, we'll create, see what happens, we'll study it.
It's like playing a big game of Risk, and that's kind of what they're doing. It's like billionaires playing a game of Risk.
Basically, the AI brute forces all the data and finds patterns. So if you were to load all of the world's weather data in real time constantly into an AI, it's going to show you basically a map of probabilities where storms may form. Our predictive capabilities are going to go through the roof with AI technology.
So you said something though. What do you get? Farmers Almanac's been doing that for so long, where they predict, weather patterns for years in advance using what? Astronomy?
Nature.
Sometimes they're very wrong. Often
very wrong, right? But sometimes they say they're 80% right, but other people say they're 50% right. But
Well, here's
solar data too. They use a lot of solar data.
Here's a question. What do you guys think is more complicated to do? Human biology, like understanding human biology start to finish, or understanding weather on a planet? What do you think?
Weather. There's trillions of variables.
Think weather's more in depth than like a human biology?
I think so.
Well, I was going to say, kind of look at, they're already using AI for their spaghetti models and all kinds of stuff. But when you think about that, really, if you've seen what happens when you allow an AI to have access to a quantum computer, you're talking about next level computational stuff. So I would agree that with all of the data that we have, they might be able to find the right spot to seed or things like that using AI, and maybe even know where it's going to go. But look how they do the weather now.
This is why all of the world's governments are racing full speed towards AI, because it is the most powerful super weapon.
Right.
You don't need to make the weapon. The AI will just tell you, if you heat this one area by 3 degrees in this radius, this will happen. And you're going to be like, okay, you don't need to build a weapon. And then you're going to be like, how do we heat it up? And it's going to say, take these metals and take these things, combine these chemicals, and it'll do it for you. But to predict global weather, I don't know that humans have been around enough, tracking enough data to really understand what's happening.
Yeah, so let me combine these two ideas, and then Brian, I'd like to get your opinion on it. So going back to this, if you're going to really control weather, not manipulate it, not modify it, you're going to have sensors about every foot on the planet to understand what's going on from the ground level up to what, 18,000 feet, maybe 20,000 feet. The same thing is true with what we get fed with global warming, global temperature data. They don't have sensors everywhere. In the oceans, it's barely covered. They might have a few buoys out there. And we're talking about overall land temperatures. There's very few temperature data stations collecting data anywhere. And they're trying to say the entire planet is heating at this uniform rate in this area. So, I'll bring it back to you then. If there's not enough, if we can't bring it down to the square foot level, which we would also need to absolutely go into specifics on how the planet's heating or cooling, then we don't have that much data at all. There's so much uncovered. Like how much uncovered area on the planet is there to try to extract this data from, and then put it into the AI models.
This slide is this is the Sahara, and when was this?
6,000 years prior. So you're looking at present data versus 6,000 years prior. So, when you talk about water erosion on the Sphinx, that would be during this time. But, that puts the dating of the Sphinx into question if there's water erosion at 6,000 years prior, and they were supposed to create the Sphinx 4,000 years ago. But that's a different topic. But it's showing you that the possibilities of the West African monsoon coming back in and changing pattern right now is one of the reasons we're seeing an enormous amount of floods across North Africa and the Sahel, which comes into the point where I would talk about, if we know that certain areas are going to get cooler on the planet and we'll lose crop production, then where would you set up a new growing zone, knowing that it was also in change to become more wet from the above ground water resources, and then as well the amount of aquifers below that, maybe the Nubian sandstone aquifer or the Sus aquifer. We're talking about thousands of cubic kilometers of water beneath there that could be tapped and brought up to supplement the above ground water rainfall. And slide 28 is just a little bit easier to look at as well. Just a little easier version for you, but you can see the change and also the pockets within that of desertification and also forest, even though it's in the desert. The oases is what people talk about, but you can see this Holocene change or the mid-Holocene changes. So we're coming back into a gigantic change. They're not building the new Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia that's filling to have the largest hydroelectric project in Africa, in one of the driest parts of Africa, unless the cycle's changing to consistent rainfall.
So I have a question, right? You're saying that 6,000 to 8,000 years ago, Sahara was largely forested.
6,000.
6,000 years ago. Honest question, what happens to all of the organic matter as it starts drying up and decaying? Are there remnants left behind, or does it disintegrate into brittle dust, or what?
Oh, that's part, but then the sand, because there's no more root structure to hold that, yes, you'll find an enormous amount of, I wouldn't say petrified, but root stock there of the larger trees that's still beneath the sand, and also the massive, massive amount of buildings, ancient cities, aqueducts, and things that were through those trade routes there from over at the Red Sea all the way to the Atlantic stretching back.
Wait, you're saying that in the Sahara there's evidence of ancient cities and all this stuff?
Everywhere.
Oh, wow.
Everywhere.
Cool.
Well, you ever heard of Michael Tellinger?
I have.
He does a lot of the
South
South Africa stone circles. That's basically along the same concept. These are thousands and thousands of years old, and it's like like sound frequency designs. They're not structures where people lived. These are like power plants almost, in a way. It's wild stuff. Michael Tellinger, incredible guy.
They find petroglyphs out there in the Sahara that show hippo, giraffe, all kinds of stuff. We know that area was a wetland for multiple times. Back into the Pleistocene too, there was all kinds of animals. That's one of the areas that man was first running around in North Africa.
But this is the amount of water vapor that had been pushed up into the upper atmosphere, into the mesosphere from the Tonga eruption. Now, this goes through every single layer further down, and you'd know, Norm, but this is in the mesosphere up around 85,000 feet. Look how much extra water is up there right now. Wow.
Yeah.
This explains a lot of different cloud formations that are happening.
Yeah, why was there so much flooding after 2022?
Yeah, because additional 14% more moisture in the Earth's atmosphere ejected in a single event.
And this was in 2022?
Correct.
Talk about cloud seeding. So
what do you think is going to happen? That it's going to rain a whole lot, and then we're going to get way more water on various parts of the planet?
Well, not that, but you could probably explain it better. Like when this water is coming back out, how does it integrate with the storms? Now, you can ride on top of a natural cycle to get a larger output, and this is what I think you're getting into with trying to manipulate these weather systems now. If you knew there was more moisture coming in from the rain out of all the water, 14% more moisture in our atmosphere coming out at a certain rate, depending on how high it is in the atmosphere, Earth's magnetic field is changing, and then you're going to ride on top of this natural cycle and try to create a different outcome of these previously unattainable, because everything is now, there's two extra variables in there for you to actually manipulate on top of what you could do with the regular cloud seeding or what you're talking about with NexRad over there, which I had a couple questions about the power output on NexRad and the actual storm and the watts per meter squared from the sun.
Whenever they're talking about like why something happens, like if you were talking about the floods, you would have to add all of these ideas. There was a comet that just went by the sun. We've had that probably sparked solar flares, or at least interacted with it. And we know that solar flares, when we have a geomagnetic storm, affects cloud seeding as well.
Right.
So, and then you add Tonga, that was all of that ocean water put up that's extra, right? And then everybody's like, why are we having these, 100-year floods or 200-year floods, 1,000-year floods? Well, 14% more water in the atmosphere might explain something, and it's going to even out, though. It is ocean water. It came from the ocean. It wasn't extra water like from a glacier or something.
So you're saying this is to be expected if you know this type of history, but also there's possibility for people who know this is happening to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I don't see why not. If you knew that there was more moisture available and your cloud seeding programs might not work as well as you want them, it may work better knowing that there's more moisture in the atmosphere.
What is this currency slide that you have? It says currency is used predominantly in commerce since 1450, and it shows that every currency lasts about 100 years.
Right, and then you start to overlay it with the longer-term solar cycles here and the different, if you're going to look at Schwab cycles or de Vries cycles, you start to see this overlap of at least a slice of time from 17 to 1900. They when you're hitting those low periods, it seems that the reserve currency changes. Now, if we're coming into this exact same cycle once again, and we are coming to this low point where almost every space agency out there is forecasting a grand solar minimum or extreme low solar activity as we step off of solar cycle 25 coming into 26. They're off by one cycle, but then again, with this amount of solar activity, nobody really got it right this time either with the exceptional amount of ramp up. So if we're really following this and the energetics are understood by those that don't generally talk about it to the public or allow the public to know, that in the energetic cycle would also signal the end of a reserve currency period, then we're starting to see that, the formation of the BRICS right now. We're moving into a different currency itself. So I'm just wondering why. This is an anecdotal side point here, that these cycles, energetic cycles, match up with currencies and the lifetime of a currency on a reserve status.
Interesting. And now you've got the BRICS nations launching a brand new currency.
Why now?
Political opportune moment?
Energetic change moment, could be both.
But the energetic change, does that mean that powerful governments are recognizing the change and intentionally launching new currencies? Or is it just that it creates a dynamic, a shift in power in different regions of the planet that will amplify one group over another, regardless of what group is there?
Right, depending amount of food production for those countries as well. Because a civilization without food is no civilization. The basic, if you bring it down to a basic, if a human doesn't eat, there is literally nothing called civilization. So food is the most important thing. We can talk about economy and we could talk about, business and government, but without food, there is literally nothing on this planet that can be structured. That's the base building block that everything moves forward from is food.
Can we predict food production in BRICS nations right now? Is the yield going to increase?
I would say yes if they turn North Africa and the Sahel into a new growing area. And the amount of investment that would be required to restart a global economy on the debt-based system, taking North Africa and the Sahel from zero to where we are in America and what we sit at in our grow belts across the United States and Canada. Imagine the amount of trillions and trillions of dollars that would be required for the roads, the irrigation systems. And then how would you pay all these people that come from around the world to work there? Well, you would pay them in cryptocurrency. You would pay them in stable coins that would have a value of, I don't care if you came from Chad or South Africa or America or Argentina, that you go back and you still have that 1 = 1. And you see this rapid implementation of cryptocurrencies across. I mean, they're going to use for payment systems as well as investment. I really believe if we're going to lose crop production, 45 north and above, and a lot of areas on the planet have far less crop yields, we're going to have to make that up elsewhere for 8 billion people to survive. So where would you put that? But remember, we have to restart the global economy.
Can they restart Africa and start growing there within our lifetime? Is that something?
It's absolutely, if the rainfall patterns continue to increase at the rate they are now, and they tap the Nubian sandstone aquifer and other aquifers beneath there, and get that underground water resource coupled with the above ground increases, absolutely yes.
It would change everything.
That would absolutely.
Change everything. It's a crazy thought.
It's larger than the United States and Canada combined as a growing area for what we consider crop production.
Wow.
And a double rotation crop, because where it sits with the sunlight patterns there, we get 2 yields out of that versus
Who's
one.
going to be growing it? Is it going to be some terrible poison seeded?
This is kind of where me and him intersect. He's following all of these trends on grain production, and then I'm scamming through the articles, and it's just article after article about shutting down farmers, shutting down private ownership of farms, shutting down people's ability to grow stuff. Yeah. I mean, you see it constantly. It's not just here, it's in Europe too. Like they're literally telling farmers, paying them to grow bird flowers and stuff instead of growing food. And then you have the major grow zones like the Ukraine and what's going on there. So that production is going to be going down.
Listen, I just looked this up actually. It's funny because we're talking about the Tonga volcano and all the moisture in Africa. You would think more hurricanes would come from that, like that, because those storms come off North Africa over the Cape Verde Islands. There's been significantly less since 2022. There wasn't actually a single hurricane in 2022. I'm seeing 2. There was 2. There's Beryl, which was this year, and then there was one other in 2023. So none for 2022, one for 2023, one for 2024.
And you know what's...
Could you cloud seed the Sahara to turn it into a growing area? Or, I mean, it's absolutely massive, so I don't know that any kind of... I mean, an irrigation plan to bring seawater in to create atmospheric moisture would be a massive endeavor.
Nah, they would just tap the aquifer there.
Fresh
there's
water.
No need for
you
any of
can
that.
just tap the aquifer and then water comes up?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can look for sandstone aquifer Africa map, and you could take a look at the amount of
One of the biggest aquifers in the world there, right?
Yeah,
The Nubian sandstone aquifer system, sorry.
No, that's right.
that's what Gaddafi was tapping to grow 100,000 acres of sorghum as a test project at the very base of Libya, which was also where one of the African mega lakes drainage basins was. So they were trying to also, they knew it was going to be raining more, so they were going to capture in a lake fashion the water from there, and they were also having large pipeline systems bringing water after they would pump it up and then take it out to these test areas. And before the invasion, and one thing with the U.S., we blew up all their water infrastructure. We blew up all of the water pipelines. Mm-hmm. Wow. Which was interesting that you would think we should learn from that.
So then is it possible, and I'm just going to throw this out there, Western interests knowing about food production, reserve currencies, view the expansion of a Saharan grow area as a threat to the reserve currency, the petrodollar, so they destabilize the region, preventing them from creating food in the area?
Until they're the ones who set it up.
Yeah.
Right.
Why did we destabilize that whole area? that we're looking at there. Libya, all the way, all of that has been destabilized, and millions of military-age men left their countries that they would be at. So later, when corporations come in there and move, there's no one going to be fighting in there because all of their male population is moved.
Almost seems like
10 million
by
men,
design.
10 million
Not only
standing
that,
armies
they
gone.
moved to a grow zone that they're shutting down, which
Yeah.
is
And then
Europe.
what? The West comes in, takes it over, turns it into a grow zone they control.
That's right.
Right.
Isn't Gaddafi making his own currency too? That
Yes.
we were upset
Go
about?
back, yeah.
Right.
And he was working on this aquifer idea.
That's all the aquifers that are beneath Africa right there.
But so they could. It doesn't seem like the greatest undertaking, if that's the case, to begin reclamation of the Sahara. I pulled up an article on the Great Green Wall, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with. They're planting rows of trees to stop the expansion of the Sahara Desert.